In this video, we're going to be talking about 9 beginner mistakes that I see a lot of photographers making, and we're going to go over how to avoid some of those pitfalls. So let's roll that intro. What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new, I'm JT. Welcome to Run and Gun. We're all about tips, tricks, hacks, and making you a better photographer. So in this video, we're going to talk about a lot of the mistakes I see beginner photographers make, because I work with a lot of people that are just starting out messing with their cameras. As an Air Force photographer right now, I'm kind of in a training position where I'm training a bunch of other photographers. So I see a lot of common mistakes with people that are just picking up the camera for the first time, or maybe some photographers that have been using the camera for about a year but have picked up some bad habits. So let's get started taking a look at some of the most common mistakes that I see, and we'll talk about how to fix them as well. So one of the first mistakes I see a lot is new photographers buy a brand new camera and they pull it out of the box, and the first thing that they throw away with all the cardboard and foam and plastic is their camera manual. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I'm seeing right now, is people like to just throw away their camera manual and never read it. And 90% of the questions you have about your camera or photography in general can usually be found right in your camera manual. Your manual has a lot of specific answers to your camera. And for the first, 2-3 months of owning a camera, I usually like to actually keep that camera manual in my bag. If I'm out shooting and I have a problem with my camera and there's some error coming up on my LCD screen and I don't have service, which happens a lot because I'm always hiking up in the mountains or the middle of nowhere, I can just grab my camera manual out of my bag and usually get that problem fixed right there, and I can keep going and I can keep shooting more photos. The second thing I see a lot with new photographers is their want to just copy other photographers. They see a look or a style they like and they tend to just copy that look over and over and over again, or copy that style, which is okay. It's okay to replicate imagery that you like, and that's a great way to learn. But there's a point where you have to start adding in a little bit of your own creativity and a little bit of your own style to be yourself. And that's really what photography and this art form is all about. Art is all about being inspired by someone else and then taking that inspiration and creating something completely new and completely different with your style. One of the biggest issues I see with new photographers is when someone says, "That's good enough." Well, to me, good enough is not good enough. If you want to be the best, if you want to be great, if you even want to be good, you're going to have to do a lot better than good enough. You'll see, especially at tourist attractions, if let's say you go to the Grand Canyon, there will be a giant group of people standing right in front of the same spot where everyone gets the exact same photo. And that is the good enough photo in this analogy. You don't want to be good enough. You want to be way better than good enough. And you want to take the photos that no one else is thinking of. Sure, go ahead, get that good enough photo. Now you have your safe photo to work with. You got the shot. Now go experiment, get a little bit weird, go out there, roll around on the ground a little bit, climb on top of a ladder, climb a tree, do something interesting that you don't see other people doing, get that interesting perspective. You're creative. Don't be getting the shot that every single tourist is going to be getting on their cell phone. And I think that applies to all sorts of photography. When it comes to portrait photography, when it comes to street photography, landscape, all of that. Don't just settle for good enough. Once you have a shot that it's good enough, don't stop there. Keep going, keep pushing yourself, keep pushing to make a better image, and that's gonna push you to become a better photographer. So don't settle for good enough. Another thing I see with new photographers is they're kind of scared to get close to their subject. They like to stay far away. And one of the biggest tips I can give in photography is get closer, and then get closer, and then get closer than that. Get close to the point where it's uncomfortable. Really confront your subject. Really get in your subject's face if, say, you're taking a portrait. That's how you really establish that connection between you and your camera and your subject. I see a lot of beginning photographers that like to throw on a wide angle lens and stand way back. And sometimes a photographer will throw on a 400mm lens, stand 2 miles away from the subject, and think they're getting the same shot as someone with a 50mm lens that's a foot away from the subject. So one of my huge tips here is get closer to your subject. And that goes right along the lines of that good enough shot. Don't stop with good enough. And tip number 5, that kind of goes along with the last tip, is to make sure your photos have a subject. Every photo that you take should have a subject. They should have something that my eye is drawn to when I look at your photo. Even a completely blank photo that is a picture of the sky that's just all blue and nothing else is in the photo, the subject is the sky in that photo. You may not always see the subject right off the bat. Sometimes photographers like to make the audience play around with the photo and make your eyes dance around a little bit to actually find the subject and have you spend more time and have more interaction with the photo. But every photo needs a subject, and make sure that when you're taking a photo, you identify what your subject is. Is your subject a vehicle, a building, a mountain, a person, a bumblebee on a flower? Figure out what that subject is, identify it, and then figure out how to compose that subject in the frame and emphasize that subject using all of your techniques, your shutter speed, your aperture and depth of field, your ISO, exposure, all of that. Identify your subject, and once you identify your subject, you're going to more easily be able to tell your audience what that subject is and have your audience focus on that subject in your photograph. So the 6th mistake that I see a lot of photographers make is they go out, they get a new camera, they see a new style or a look on Instagram, and the first thing they do is go out and buy all of the new preset packs and all of the new presets for Lightroom and Photoshop and photo filters and all that good stuff, which is great. But if you're not taking fantastic photos, a preset is not going to make your photo fantastic. It's like putting lipstick on a pig. The lipstick might be nice, but the pig is still ugly. So I really recommend that you get to know your camera, make sure you know how to make a properly exposed image, start taking awesome images, and that's when you're gonna start using presets that make your images look even better, and you start molding those great photos that you're taking with a cool preset, and that's how you start to get your own style. Don't be too concerned about presets and just slapping a preset on your photo when you're just beginning. They're a great tool when you're already taking some great photos. Mistake number 7 that I see a lot with new photographers is they don't like to bring all your gear. And I get it. Once you start loading up your backpack with all of your lenses, your wide lens, your normal lens, your telephoto, sometimes a super telephoto, your camera body, extra batteries, a tripod, it gets heavy. I get it. But one of the biggest mistakes I see, and I see this all the time and I always have to correct it. Let's say I'll be out with a photographer shooting and they have a normal lens on, like a 24-70 that most people have. That's a pretty standard lens. And we'll see something happening off in the distance, and that's a great moment to throw on, say, a 70-200 or a 300 or a 400 millimeter lens. And they say, oh, well, I didn't bring that lens with me because it's heavy. Lenses are heavy, I get it. I carry around 45-ish to 50 pounds of gear almost every time I go shoot. And it's a lot of work, and I have to stay in shape just to carry around all that gear. But I spent a lot of money on those lenses for a reason, and that's because there's a reason I bought them. They do a specific job, and it's like going out to a work site and not having all your tools. You're not gonna get the job done, or you're not gonna get the job done as well as you should, and you're gonna be taking that good enough photo, which to me isn't good enough. So when you're going out, let's say you're wandering the streets of New York or Chicago or LA, take the gear that you're comfortable taking with you. Take as much gear as you are comfortable carrying with you, and kind of plan out your shoot before you go and take specific lenses that you might need. Be very intentional with how you pack your camera bag, because you might not need 6 batteries. You may not need your fisheye lens. Think about the lenses that you will need. Pack your bag intentionally, and you're spending a lot of money on your lenses for them to sit at home in a case because they're heavy. Just think about that next time you go out and shoot. Tip number 8, and this is super important, make sure you're cleaning your camera gear. I help out new photographers all the time, and I'll go and I'll look through their viewfinder and they'll wonder what's wrong with their photo. Well, you have a bunch of dog hair on your sensor, or you have dust on your sensor, and it happens to me too. Everybody's sensors get dirty, everybody's lenses get dirty, both the front and the back, your mirror and your viewfinder, and your glass will get dirty inside your camera body. You have to be extremely careful when you're taking your lens off. Make sure there's no sand and dirt and dust and pollen. I've seen pollen a lot. Pollen's really underrated and not talked about that much, but that stuff will really get into your lens and it sticks to your lens. So be careful when you're taking your camera body and your lens apart. Make sure you're keeping all of them clean. And when you get home from a shoot, clean your camera gear, especially before you take your lens off, because that dust sits right there in that little ring. Your camera might be weather sealed, but as soon as you take that off, camera is no longer weather sealed, and all that dirt, sand, dust, pollen, bugs, whatever, hair is going to get right into your camera body, and you really want to avoid that. And make sure you're doing a cleaning every now and then. If you don't feel comfortable cleaning your camera, send it off to the company. It's absolutely worth cleaning your camera versus going back into Photoshop and cleaning out and dust removing all of the crap that ends up getting on your lens and your sensor. And last, but certainly not least, is mistake number 9, is I see photographers holding their camera improperly all the time. And that's one way to get blurry photos and just not look professional. When you're holding your camera, you want to make sure that you have a nice, good grip on your camera body. And there's a couple different ways, but the biggest one is to support your camera underneath. You don't want to be chicken winged and shooting like this. That looks really unprofessional, and that's how I know you are a beginner photographer, is when I see folks shooting like this. It looks kind of cringeworthy. Make sure you have a good grip on your camera, and then it should become muscle memory to be bringing your secondary hand right underneath. Make sure you're getting a nice support hand. I should be able to support my camera just with this hand, and then I can use my other hand for manipulating all of my buttons. But make sure you have that good support that will allow you to mess with your focus, your zoom, any of these secondary buttons on the side. Sometimes you'll have like a little autofocus button. This is where my lens release button is going to be, but make sure you have that support. Make sure your arms aren't chicken winged out to the side. They're nice and tight, so you're getting that support right up against your body. And then you're gonna have your feet spread apart, usually about shoulder width, and you're creating a natural tripod with your body, and you're not out all crazy like this. So that's gonna help you get steadier shots. It's gonna help you swing from the hip if you're working with trying to get a panning shot of something that's going by pretty quick. And it's all around gonna help you look more professional. You're gonna feel more comfortable. Your center of gravity is closer to the center of your body, so your arms are doing less work out here, and you're just supporting your camera better. You're gonna look more professional, feel more professional, and you're actually gonna be getting better, sharper images out of properly supporting and properly holding your camera. So that is all for this video. I hope you guys liked it. I hope those 9 mistakes are something you're gonna start avoiding, or at least thinking about how to correct them. So if you can think of any other beginner mistakes, let me know down below in the comments, and I would be glad to help you fix some of those mistakes that you might be running into. So if you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more of my run and gun tips, tricks, and hacks, and until next time, get out and go shoot.